House of Hot Topics is in session with Whoopi, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
As guest co-host today, please welcome former Secretary of State and former National Security Advisor, Dr. Condoleezza Rice. So let's get into it, because yesterday, White House Communications Director Hope Hicks announced she's resigning the day after telling the White House Intel Committee that she's, maybe told some white lies on behalf of the White House resident. Officials claim that she's been planning to leave for quite some time, and it begs the question, what do you think?
Well, what's the white lie? You look thin in that tie? what kind of... I don't get that.
Well, first of all, I have no idea. But has your assistant ever said, oh, she's tied up, and you really weren't?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't really know what happened here. But look, it's hard for any president to lose somebody who's really close to him. And I think particularly in the case of this president, he didn't come in with a staff that really knew a lot about politics. If you think about being governor of Texas, you've had people around you for a long time who helped you in politics. If you were senator from Illinois, like President Obama, you've had a Senate staff that helped you. He came in with nobody. And so...
Omarosa, don't forget Omarosa.
Well, but it's a little bit different being on the Apprentice and being in the White House. And so I think it's hard.
Isn't that the problem, Dr. Rice? Because you have Hope Hicks, who was very close to him, but she was 29 years old, absolutely no political experience. I mean, during, the Bush administration, you have people like Nicole Wallace. She knows communication. She knows politics. And President Trump said he was going to surround himself with the best people, but he's surrounding himself with people with no experience. Does that make sense?
Gone now,
A lot of the people that came in with him, look, the president's going to be most comfortable with somebody that he trusts. Because it's now, whoever is in that White House, it's a hard job, right? And it's a lonely job. And I'm also not surprised. It really is. So I'm not surprised that you've got people, from the family and so forth and so on. Look, I've always said, I always thought that it was good if your first job in government wasn't President of the United States.
Yes.
But that's where we are. And so...
That's hilarious.
First job. But it's where we are, and it's not surprising to me that, therefore, this is an unconventional White House staff.
Well, it is that. It is that. Now, with Hope gone from the administration, he's losing another member of his inner circle at the White House. And I guess the question is, we've actually already answered this, but how important is it for him to have his peeps in there?
Well, I think loyalists are really important. And again, if you have loyalists in politics, people that are truly your ride or die, that no matter what are going to go down with you or up with you no matter what. And as the candidate that didn't come from politics, it was strange that, his communications director, I think, worked on Ivanka's fashion blog beforehand. But by all reports, she has glowing accolades from everyone from General Kelly to the president himself, very close with Ivanka. I was shocked at this news yesterday. I thought she would be one of the people turning the lights out whenever it is that he leaves in 3 years or 8. And I will say that the White House is plagued with these communications and narrative problems. And I do think maybe if you're General Kelly sitting there and you're just like, the Rob Porter scandal, her saying white lies, which, as you pointed out, Joy, I don't really know what that means. And all communications director, but all communications directors spin. And spinning on some level is can be interpreted as lying, or at least pushing the truth in a way that you want. And this White House seems completely incapable of controlling their narrative. So maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Can I take up the point of loyalty for a second?
Yes.
Because, I mean, he lies. He lies all the time. Everybody knows it. And then his loyalists double down on the lies. I don't think that that's a good thing for them to do. But that's because they're being loyal to the liar.
But I will say that there is a difference between.
I have to say this. Harry Truman said, if you want loyalty in Washington, get a dog. Because it's a very tough town, and don't underestimate how important it is for the president to have people around him with whom he feels comfortable. But to Cindy's point, I think they've just had a lot of trouble. I'm sorry, Megan.
Cindy was here yesterday.
Cindy was here yesterday. I know her mom very well, so I apologize for that. But Megan, I think, to Megan's point, I think the big issue is that they're having trouble with messaging.
Yes.
They're having trouble with messaging because discipline in messaging is really important. And it's frankly hard when the president is his own messenger.
Well, but how about this?
How about tweeting? That makes it exceedingly hard.
If the messenger doesn't know jack about the job.
That seems to be the case.
Because the message comes from the top.
I get a lot of schadenfreude because during the election, people like, I mean, I would never compare myself to you, but people who have had any experience in politics or on campaigns were really vilified. We're the swamp creatures, drain it. They're all awful. Do you know what swamp creatures do? They like the swamp. They're good at knowing how to manipulate it and work in it. Maybe if you had a few swamp creatures working in your White House, you wouldn't have so many people jumping ship heading back to New York City.
And also, you know, there's nothing wrong with being a swamp creature, because you know how to get around. You know, but when you have somebody who can't give you the message because he doesn't know how the message comes out. I mean, he led a televised bipartisan meeting yesterday with lawmakers about guns in America, where he seemed to be open to a lot of interesting gun reform, and he even accused Republican Senator Toomey of being afraid of the NRA. Now, he says he wants to make some changes, but somehow he's not aware, he wasn't aware that this gun discussion has been going on for quite some time.
Well, but he was part of the gun discussion, and if I remember correctly, in 2000, he was in favor of an assault a weapon on assault, a ban on assault weapons. And so I wonder, who are we seeing now? Are we seeing the real Donald Trump?
No, we're seeing the same guy we've been seeing the whole time.
But
sometimes he's over here, sometimes he's over here, sometimes he's over here. I mean, you know, it's like Bugs Bunny. Have you ever seen the Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs plays all, you know, he's the batter and then he's the catcher, and that's him.
But that's the thing. Is the NRA going to turn on him?
I'm going to tell you something. One thing that people kind of like is that it's not a canned message all the time. I think that's one of the things that people got tired of in Washington. And so people change their minds. And if we get a change on gun control, that's not a bad thing.
I totally agree with what you're saying, that his message has this populist resonance because it's so real. I will say, when you have people like Laura Ingraham today talking about, don't even worry about 2020, if you turn on Second Amendment, people like myself and the NRA, I was watching it yesterday, like you, Sonny, and I was like, I guess he is the leftist gun grabber that I always assumed he was, sitting in Midtown Manhattan. Because some of the things, but it's bizarre to me that he has he spoke at the NRA convention, he has huge NRA support across the country.
$30 million
and all of a sudden, he's lecturing Pat Toomey on being afraid of the NRA. Give me a break.
But this is who he's been this the entire time. You can't, he will say one thing and then he will go and do something totally different. This is who he's never changed up the fact. And I get that people like that, but what I don't understand is when you are in the midst of serious business. This is serious business. This is not like a tiptoe. This is the President of the United States has a tough job in the world.
Right.
It is a tough job because you're trying to balance all of this stuff. And if we can't trust you to make a decision that whether we like the decision or not, that we don't have to go to bed and think, oh my God, what is it going to be tomorrow? I don't want to do that for the next time. No.
My final note.
Wait.
Sorry. We're coming back to gun control, right?
We'll see what happens.
All right.
We'll be right back with more.
Still ahead, politically correct? How Meghan's mom, Cindy McCain's appearance on yesterday's show caused a bipartisan revolution on social media. Tomorrow on The View, the heat is on. Because the topics will be extra hot when Anna Navarro co-hosts. Then get ready to cool things down, because we're jamming with Jimmy Buffett.
TGIF.
Tomorrow on The View. Still ahead, Congressman Adam Schiff is live to talk about his war with the White House. And funny man Marlon Wayans hits the table.
When we were last at The View, there was a conversation going on about guns. Let's rejoin.
I was just commenting during our Hot Topics meeting that I was reading that you said you are a defender of the Second Amendment, but you don't think civilians should have assault weapons.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I'm a defender of the Second Amendment. I was a little girl growing up in Birmingham, Alabama in the late 50s, early 60s. There was no way that Bull Connor and the Birmingham police were going to protect you. And so when white night riders would come through our neighborhood, my father and his friends would take their guns and they'd go to the head of the neighborhood, it was a little cul-de-sac, and they would fire in the air if anybody came through. I don't think they actually ever hit anybody. But they protected the neighborhood. And I'm sure if Bull Connor had known where those guns were, he would have rounded them up. And so I don't favor some things like gun registration. That said, it's time to have a national conversation about how we can deal with the problems that we have. It's not going to be any single fix to the terrible events of Parkland. You're going to have to decide, well, should civilians really have access to what are really military weapons? What do we do about the age at which people can do this? And finally, let me just say, we also need to realize that if you get that many tips about somebody that they're going to cause harm, go and figure out what was going on.
Well, they tried, but they didn't. But to the point of age, I looked it up. Out of the 156 mass shootings between 2009 and 2016, only 11 were under 21.
Yeah.
And many of the ones who were under 21 got those weapons from somebody who was over 21. So this one little fix-it that Trump's talking about is really nothing.
That's the point.
I think it's important.
It won't do it. We got to have many things that we
But it's important to point out that there's never been a mass shooting that's been carried out by an NRA member in our history. That's never happened. So as a vocal NRA supporter and Second Amendment supporter, we feel vilified. And when President Trump goes on TV and says something like, take the guns first, go through due process second, that turns me into someone that gets very tribal and very territorial, because I'm not exactly sure what he means. AR-15s
he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's against the law.
Let's concede that. Exactly. But I will say that AR-15s are the most popular rifle in America. There are, NRA estimates, more than 8 million of them. My brother, I think, has 2 or 3. I don't remember how many exactly, but I've been around them. People use them for hunting. I said that on the show a few weeks ago, and people really pushed back. Time magazine has a whole article about how people shoot coyotes, elk, deer, antelope, feral pigs.
What did they use during the ban to hunt a coyote? There was a ban. What did they use?
But it doesn't. But I think they used the guns at the level of whatever they were in history. But I'm just saying, if you want to talk about banning assault rifles, there are certain states that have banned them. New York City is one of them.
Thank goodness.
I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is, okay, so according to President Trump, if we're just going to take everyone's guns, does that mean someone's going to go over to my brother's house and take away what assault rifles, whatever he has that Trump is now deeming is okay for an individual to have?
They had a buyback.
Yeah, or a recall.
So you could give them back.
But here's part of the problem. You know, he vilified Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
And whipped people up and said, oh, she's coming for your guns.
Yeah.
See, most NRA members are saying, listen, we don't mind letting you know that we're okay and what's going on, but you can't threaten to take folks' guns. I'm with you. There's a way to do this. Everybody would like to have everything all the time. Sometimes we have to give some stuff up to keep other stuff. So maybe we don't have 500 different kinds of guns. Maybe we only have 300 different kinds of guns. People don't lose the right to have their guns. But I do think that when you talk about school shootings, oftentimes the shooters have come out of homes that have a whole bunch of guns, where I feel adults knew that there could be an issue with these folks that were living with them, and not enough was done there. I put that, some of this I think we have to also say to parents, if you know that your child might have some issues and you've got a lot of guns in your house, lock them up. Lock the guns up.
Can I ask you a question, though? Can I ask the table a question? So there was actually a law where the shooter, this school shooter in Parkland, he could have been arrested because of the threats that he gave, the written threats towards other students. He could have been arrested by Florida law. He was, there were calls, I think, 46, 47 times, people complaining about him. So law enforcement's also dropping the ball on
But that's the point. They drop the ball, they drop the stitch. People are, you know, they're, what's the word I'm looking for? Fallible. And everybody makes mistakes. The FBI makes a mistake. What the thing that steady is that assault rifle. So that if you make a mistake and you don't have access to that gun, you can't shoot all those people.
As many people.
We've just had,
that's the point.
But I just want to make a point here. We've just had, in this few minutes, a more intelligent conversation about gun control that we're having in the country. And why is that? It's because the first thing we want to do is we want to label people. You're NRA, so you must believe certain things. You are not pro-Second Amendment, so you must believe certain things. And this is a problem that the country has. We need to find a way to talk about all the possible solutions that are out there. I do think law enforcement and the FBI, you know, it's like if there were a terrorist who was 46 times cited, you better believe somebody would have talked to him. So I wonder, there is an issue here also with
I wonder because, you know, everything is very compartmentalized. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about a better way to do things. You'll see what I'm talking about. We'll be right back.
Next, is this the man who caused Hope Hicks to leave the White House? House Intel Committee Chair Congressman Adam Schiff is live on The View to talk about who else from the Trump administration he's putting in the hot seat.
Our next guest is public enemy #1 with the White House right now, as he heads up the House Intelligence Committee investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election. Please welcome Congressman Adam Schiff.
Congressman, I'll start. So your committee spoke to Hope Hicks yesterday, I believe, was it, or the day before?
Day before.
And then the next day, she resigned from the White House, saying that she also said she had said these little white lies. Number one, can that lead to little white perjury? That's my first question. And the second is that the White House says that the timing had nothing to do with anything, that it was just she decided the next day. Do you buy that?
I don't know what was involved in the timing. And, you know, in fairness to Hope Hicks, I wish the conversations of the committee had never left the committee. The question that was asked of her, though, was certainly a pertinent question. If a witness is willing to say things that aren't true on behalf of the boss outside the committee, we need to know because it reflects whether they'll be truthful in the committee. But the most significant issue I had with her testimony are the whole areas that she refused to testify on the instructions of the White House. Now, that's not her fault. That's the instructions of her employer.
And she could do that.
Well, she can't unless we let her do that. And this is the issue. Will the Congress assert itself? Will the Congress insist on answers? When Steve Bannon refused to answer questions along the same lines, the Republicans said, well, we need to demand answers. That's an outrage. And they subpoenaed him on the spot.
I see.
Now, Steve Bannon apparently is a man without a country. Not beloved in the White House, no longer with Breitbart. So my colleagues in the GOP were willing to stand up and assert the institutional responsibilities of the committee. Not so with Corey Lewandowski, not so with Hope Hicks, not so with any number of witnesses who have similarly refused to answer questions. They need to be subpoenaed. They need to be compelled. And
By
where
Robert Mueller.
Well, by us, as well as Mueller, but by us. And if there is a legitimate claim as to a small subset of questions that deal with executive privilege, then we should negotiate and respect that. But you can't say we're simply not going to answer questions about anything that happened during the transition, anything that happened during the administration, whether it involved the president or it didn't. And we have obviously very important questions to ask Hope Hicks about the preparation of that false statement about the meeting at Trump Tower with the Russians.
With John Jr.
Exactly.
I'd like to go a little different direction, if you don't mind, because you are, at the Intelligence Committee, probably the institution that has best access to what actually happened with the Russians. And my view is, if the Russians did it to us the first time, shame on them. If they do it to us again, shame on us. So what are we doing? What are we doing? Quite apart from the investigation of the White House or the transition or any of that, how's the committee pursuing the issue of what the Russians actually did and how we actually stop it? Because I can imagine that Vladimir Putin is ready to go again, and we shouldn't let him do that.
I think that's exactly right, and indeed all of our intelligence chiefs have said as much, that they expect the Russians will be back. Indeed, the Russians have never left. In terms of what's being done about it, I have to say not nearly enough. The states are certainly taking action. They're hardening their elections infrastructure to make sure the Russians can't penetrate it again, can't monkey around with the vote counts. But what we need, because you know how formidable the Russians are as an adversary, is a whole-of-government response, where every cabinet secretary is working within their portfolio to establish a deterrent for the Russians. There are still bipartisan sanctions sitting on the president's desk that he refuses to implement. We need to send a clear message to Russia that any further meddling won't be tolerated. They'll pay a heavy price for it.
What kind of heavy price?
Well, the price that the Russians care most about is a price to their economy. That's why the top priority for the Russians are doing away with sanctions over their invasion of Ukraine, doing away with sanctions over their meddling in our election, because what Putin really fears more than anything else is not losing an election. If you're a viable opponent of the Kremlin, you end up in jail or dead. What he does fear, though, is the power of people to gather in massive numbers and throw out their autocratic government. And to the degree the Russian economy suffers and people take to the streets, that's the threat that he fears.
Do you think we fully know what happened, though? Are you confident that we really understand how the Russians did what they did?
We know an awful lot about how they did what they did in terms of their hacking operation, the dumping of documents, in terms of their use of social media and their use of paid media like RT and Sputnik. We don't know as much as we should about whether they also used financial entanglement, which they have used in Europe and elsewhere to exert influence, and that's the money laundering issue. We obviously don't know the full role of the Trump campaign, although we know a lot more than that than when we started. We know enough, though, to take firm steps to respond to them and to harden our defenses. We know enough to know they'll be back.
So let me ask you this, because I find it insane that you co-chair the Intel Committee, Devin Nunes is your co-chair, and that you're supposed to be working together, and you have two different sides. It's become more about the politics rather than the job, which is to do the intel that answer these questions. And I want to know, because if this is so partisan, how are we supposed to understand, as just a regular person going down the street, how are we supposed to know who to believe?
Yeah, competing memos.
Well, I mean,
this is a really central problem and challenge.
Yeah.
When we had our first open hearing in March of last year, I said at that time that the best service we could offer the public is if we could do a thorough investigation, arrive at a common conclusion, and not force the public to choose between a GOP version and a Democratic version. That was the goal. Now, I have been told since that hearing, because at that hearing James Comey revealed for the first time that he had opened an investigation the previous July into the Trump campaign's connections with the Russians, that my colleagues at GOP felt that hearing was an unmitigated disaster for them. It was the very next day that the chairman went on that midnight run to get documents that he said showed malfeasance of the Obama administration. And the following day, he went back and presented those, and we would learn that the documents he obtained actually had gotten from the White House, and it was concocted with the White House. That's the point at which the committee investigation really diverged. And this memo business, we asked the chairman, was this similarly done in conjunction with the White House? And he wouldn't answer the question. And it's very hard, obviously, to do an objective investigation if the chair views his mission differently as protecting the president. And I view our mission as protecting the public and letting the chips fall wherever they may. And I would, frankly, be thrilled, have been thrilled, if we could have seen this investigation through on a bipartisan basis and reached whatever conclusion we reached, whether it was exoneration or incrimination, if we had done it together.
Let me just say that I've spent a lot of time in Washington, and I know you've got a really hard job, and I appreciate what you're doing for the country, but I really hope you can wrap it up. The country needs to get back to business, so that's my greatest hope is that this gets done, and this gets done. And by the way, I just want to say on Robert Mueller, this is somebody I know. I worked with him. He was FBI director when I was National Security Advisor. I have enormous respect for him. And he is going to do this in a very fair way. And so I just hope we can get it done.
Yeah. So here's what we know. Here's what we know thus far. Congressman Adam Schiff is sticking around.
Okay, good.
We'll be right back.
Hi, Congressman. So I think at this point in time, it's really difficult for me and many Americans to differentiate between what is overhype and what isn't. You've said on more than one occasion that you've seen ample evidence of the Trump campaign's Russia collusion. Last March, you said you had more than circumstantial evidence of treasonous collusion with Russia. What specifically were you referring to? And please be specific, because if it's true, I do believe Americans have the right to know a year later what that is.
Well, I've certainly said that there's ample evidence of collusion. I've never used the word treason. Only Steve Bannon has used that word. But if you look at the facts that are already in the public domain, they're pretty damning. Starting with what we know about George Papadopoulos, one of the few foreign policy advisors to the campaign. We now know that Papadopoulos was approached by the Russians and told back in April of the election year, even before the Clinton campaign knew, that the Russians had stolen Clinton and DNC emails. And we also know that they previewed their dissemination, the anonymous dissemination of those emails with Papadopoulos back in April. Now, it was only weeks later that the Russians made a second approach to the Trump campaign, this time at the highest levels, at Trump Tower, in a meeting that they previewed by saying that they wanted to offer incriminating information about Hillary.
Is it enough for Mueller to bring charges? Because if it isn't enough for Mueller to bring charges, what does that mean?
Well,
charges of collusion.
This is a very important question, and that is what's Mueller's job and what's our job. Bob Mueller will make the decision whether there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt to indict and convict people. It is not his responsibility to tell the country what happened. And indeed, there's no guarantee that the country will ever learn what Bob Mueller finds apart from an indictment. It's the job of the Congress to tell the American people what happened. Whether it reaches the standard beyond a reasonable doubt, or we merely find clear and convincing evidence of collusion. So it's important, I think, that we set out the facts for the public, set out the facts about what the Russians told Papadopoulos, about what the Russians did in setting up that meeting in Trump Tower. Now, bear in mind that meeting at Trump Tower, which takes place after the campaign is alerted that the Russians have these emails. Don Jr. is told, hey, at the highest levels, ultra-sensitive, we have information incriminated about Hillary Clinton as part of the Russian government effort to help Donald Trump. That looks a lot like collusion to me.
And you're a former federal prosecutor.
Yes.
I just think if Mueller doesn't end up charging him, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yes,
rough. Thank you.
But we won't know. Until Congress, you know what I'm doing. I'm rapping you, and I'm so sorry because you should have been here the whole hour.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. But you know what? Whatever's going to come out, we're going to hear it from you before we hear it from anybody else. I hope from the committee, not just you. Thank you for coming. Come back.
I would love to. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, ladies? I'm here to tell you about my brand new comedy special, Wokus. And I know you guys think, hey, there's 5 of us at the table. I know it's a lot, but remember, I'm from a family of 10, so you're missing some heads.
these royal families who has cracked me up for decades, from the classic sketch comedy show In Living Color, you remember that, to the scary movie franchise. He's finally doing his very first stand-up comedy special called Wokish. Please welcome Marlon Wayans. You a hot topic.
Okay.
We were talking about...
I like the way you asked that, so I want to ask you some hot topics. I want to get up in your business.
Basically, we were talking about Hope Hicks leaving the White House, and she's one of many departures. What do you make of that?
I don't know. First of all, they must have asked her some real hard questions for her to quit her job the next day.
I know.
They must have asked her something. They was like, girl, I got to go. and normally you would think like this would be something new. Like, oh my God, Hope Hicks is leaving. Yeah. But with this administration, like, every other week somebody's getting fired. Yeah. And I say in my stand-up, he's literally turned the White House into a reality show. Like, I find myself watching politics like women watch reality shows. Like, girl, did you see what happened today? Your boy Trump is tripping again.
So you come from a really famous, funny family.
Yes.
Yeah. First time at stand-up. Why? What took you so long?
No, it's because I have so much respect for the art of stand-up that I've been doing stand-up now 7 years, and it takes you a while to get your footing. I didn't want to. I started from the rock bottom. I was very famous. I had movies and box office and hundreds of millions of dollars of box office before I said, okay, let me do stand-up. And I started in coffee houses. I started in open mics. I did the journey. I did the journey to really respecting the art. And the fact that I got so many brothers and sisters in my family that do stand-up, I was like, you know, stand-up, you usually pull from your life. And I'm just like, well, damn, there's 10 of us. I ain't got no more stories left.
So what did you do?
You realize, I just started doing stand-up. I started talking about life. I started talking about politics. I started talking about me. And I realized that everybody has a story to tell. Yes. And we're all different. Just like every stand-up comedian, we can all have a Trump joke, but everybody got a different one, and that's what makes comedy beautiful, is the laughter.
Was my mom one of your teachers?
No, your mom, I think, was one of my other brothers and sisters' teachers, but we over at the Hudson Gill, right? Yeah. And yeah, with Chelsea kids, so you know, if y'all got problems with Whoopi, y'all holler at me. No, to this day, if Whoopi got beef, she just goes, cuckoo, all of Chelsea be over there right now. But you know, the Hudson Gill, like, I went to Head Start there. Right. It's a great community center. They gave me my first immunization shots. You know, I learned to read at the Hudson Gill. I recently went back and talked to the kids at the Hudson Gill. I go give back. I donated money this year because they've been cutting spending and giving those places like the Hudson Gill financing. So I personally gave money. When I do talk shows or do certain things where I could raise money, I do it and I give it to the Hudson Gill because I feel like that's my give back.
Well, Marlon, you now have your own comedy special called Wokish, and we have a clip. Let's all take a look.
You know what? Some of these rappers, they spend their money on frivolous. You know what they need? They need, like, some financial advisors. They need to sit down with somebody like Charles Schwab or Merrill Lynch, you know, before they write their rhymes. I got 9 cars. Wait, those are depreciating assets. You want to put that money on a nice condominium for yourself. I'm popping bottles with models. Hold on now. Those bottles are $700 in the club. You could take your ass right down to Costco. You get the same bottle for $29.99.
That's hilarious. I understand you actually had a famous heckler one time.
I had plenty of famous hecklers, starting with my brothers. But one time I was doing stand-up, and I was was just starting, so I was at the Laugh Factory, and I was like, and when you're up there, you're searching. You know, I don't always have every joke written, so I go, so what's funny? So what else is new? And I just heard somebody go, how about some jokes?
One person.
And I was like, okay. So I said, okay. So I got some laughs, and I said, okay, what else is funny? He goes, I don't know, but that last one sucked. And I looked in the crowd, and I seen Chris Rock heckling me, and I said, oh, wow.
That's funny.
Oh, wow.
He does that. He does that.
Yeah. But I realized, see, in the fraternity of comedy, that's meant to make you better. And I'm very thankful for the hard knocks that I got from my brothers and from Rock and from all those, because that's their form of love and support. Yeah. And I thank them for that. I wouldn't be me doing Wokish if it wasn't for them.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, on that note, our thanks to Marlon Wayans. Wokish is streaming on Netflix right now. I watched it yesterday. It's hilarious. We'll be right back.
Tomorrow, raise a glass, because the legendary Jimmy Buffett's turning the View into Margaritaville.
Hey, welcome back. You have an amazing documentary happening. What's going on?
Well, it's a documentary called American Creed, aired a couple days ago on PBS, and the idea is that an American historian, David Kennedy, and I decided we needed to help Americans reaffirm what holds us together, not what tears us apart. We are an amazing story of people who've come from every part of the world, whose ancestors came from every part of the world. We're not of one religion, not one blood, and one not ethnicity. So what holds us together is this aspiration, it's this belief that you can come from humble circumstances and do great things. You don't have to be a prisoner of where you started. And so this documentary affirms that, and I hope people will watch it, American Creed, because we really, as a country, need to have a conversation about what holds us together, not what tears us apart.
Well, we will do that. So if you haven't seen American Creed yet, we have a link on our website, and we'll give you all the information. Thank you for coming. Come back again. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming. We want everybody to have a great day. Take a little time to enjoy whatever view you happen upon.